Welcome to the Bromley Adult Education College Digital Drop-In Podcast, getting you back to work with confidence.
Hello, I'm Jill Collier and welcome to episode 18 of the Digital Drop-In Podcast. Today I'm joined by Pauline Virgo-Smith, and Pauline would like to share her knowledge with us of working for the civil service. Pauline was with the civil service for over 20 years and had a variety of jobs within that time period, and I'm just interested to find out what goes on there. So hello Pauline.
Hello.
Welcome. So firstly, were you based in the same building all that time, or did you move from one building to another? Was it all based in London?
All based in London, and I moved from one building to the other. When I started work there...
What did you start as?
I started as an admin assistant.
And this is from when you left school, or?
Well, more or less leaving college. I left college and I more or less walked straight into the job.
Lovely.
Applied for it via a newspaper.
Right. And what qualifications or requirements was there to get into the civil service? Did you need to be able to type, shorthand?
No. When I started work, I think the minimum requirements were O-levels,
right.
And at the time I had A-levels, so I applied on that basis. And as I said, I applied via a newspaper. It took 3 months from the time of my application to actually start the role.
Right.
So, yeah.
And how long were you in that junior post for, roughly?
So roughly it was about 3 years. I then got promoted to the admin officer. I was in that post for about 6 years. And then I got promoted from that grade into the executive officer. And I was in that role, or in that grade should I say, and in that role for about 5 years.
And are we getting to what would you be doing by this level in your? So
executive officer is the first line of management in the civil service. So then my first job was working in the chemicals directorate, where I dealt with the competitiveness of British companies. Right. So that was...
so what would you have to do to deal with the competitiveness? Would
so
you have to
meeting with trade associations, listening
right.
to their views, making representations to ministers on behalf of those companies, organising various events, seminars, so that we can gauge the competitiveness of the companies. Right. Dealing sometimes with ministerial cases and having to write briefings for ministers, answering ministers' cases, various. Then I had management responsibility for 2 members of staff, so I was thrown into the literally thrown into the managing people, having to write reports, and that was a big thing.
Yes.
When you first start off, so that was quite a challenge.
I think now people get more support in moving from one sort of position to another, and suddenly managing people is a whole different ball game from doing your job yourself, but actually managing people. It's not even connected, so that can be quite a challenge.
It was a challenge. So moving to a new role on promotion, having to deal with completely different issues, and then having to have that responsibility of managing someone else's workload as well as yours.
Yes.
I found that quite challenging.
Yes. And then once you'd mastered that, do you keep going for promotions, or do they invite you? Do they say, we think you're ready now, Pauline?
Well, it's a bit of both. So you've got to meet the criteria. So you've got to be able to be at a level, I can't remember exactly what it was, but you've had to have reached the let's call it threshold for argument's
Yes.
sake. So once you've met the minimum requirements, then you can apply for promotion.
Right.
And then sometimes with that promotion you might get extra management responsibilities. It depends on the role, and sometimes
Yes.
you might not.
Yes.
You know, but yeah.
So, is the civil service a good place to work? What are the benefits? So, is the salary competitive to commercial companies? Or?
It depends. I mean, I looking back now in hindsight, I really did enjoy it. One of my most enjoyable jobs then, I worked for about 6 years in the private office, and that was the private office is the ministerial offices where you're dealing with ministerial correspondence. And the reason why I enjoyed it so much, it was more so with the people. And, you know, obviously I worked quite long hours because with the ministerial correspondence, there was the thing is you had to deal with all the correspondence which came in from the minister on the day, because we had a 10-day turnaround time. So if a member of public wrote in, or if, a member of parliament wrote in on behalf of a constituent, we had 10 days to turn around the correspondence. So the minute it was received in, it was my job, for example, as the correspondence clerk, to find the relevant official who would be in the best position to answer that correspondence, and then I had to track that correspondence to make sure that it came back and that it was replied to within the 10-day turnaround time.
Right.
So that, you know, in itself was quite a job. And then, in addition to that, I had to work with my colleagues that were dealing with the diary and that sort of stuff. So it was. It
was a demanding.
It was demanding.
job?
It was demanding. The work was. There was a lot of volume, so you imagine you might get, if there was a particular issue, for example. So, for example, now we're in the cost of living crisis. So you might be getting like 50, 100 letters a day.
Yes.
And you know that even though you might be sending stop replies, they still have to be processed.
Yes.
You see, so you know. If
I think you'd be lucky if it was only 50 to 100.
Yeah.
Probably add another zero.
Probably another zero. So sometimes we had issues like that,
Yes.
you know, that would come in, and you know, I very often used to start work at 8:30 and used to finish at 8 o'clock.
Yes. Yeah.
That was my day, and so the people who generally worked in a private office would, you know, tend to work there 2-3 years maximum, and then they just get totally burnt out and have to move on.
Yes.
But I stayed there quite some time, and I built up a good relationship with my colleagues and everything, and I'm still friends with them today.
Yes.
And it was enjoyable, even though the work, it could get monotonous because it was the same thing all the time.
Yes.
But it was really good, and obviously you got to meet with the ministers and stuff.
Yes.
So it was quite good. I'd worked with quite a lot of ministers in my time.
And then where did you go from there? So you've done
I did the
penance of
the ministerial
long hours.
office, and then it was from the ministerial office. Then I worked in the chemicals directorate. From the chemicals directorate, I worked in on the trade side. So I was the export manager for the desk that dealt with exports to Ghana and Togo for a year. And then I worked in a section called Invest UK, and I looked after inward investment from Ireland, France, Belgium and the Netherlands. And that was quite interesting as well, because I was able to travel out to those countries, and in particular with the Netherlands, I went to the Netherlands, and we had a stand there, and I was responsible then for organising the stand.
Would this be at an exhibition or something?
An exhibition, inward investment exhibition, and so I was responsible for setting up the stand, manning the stand.
Lovely.
You know, so
you got to travel a bit in that position.
So I got to travel. So I went to Cork. I went to Amsterdam. I went to Belgium.
Lovely.
Managed to forget my passport on one of them, so that was quite funny. And it was really interesting.
I mean, I would think positions like that at this present time, in the last couple of years with Brexit, it must be more difficult, because obviously the whole import and export procedure, now we're out of the EU, is really quite different, isn't it?
So I can imagine in the COVID time that work must have just dried up.
Yes.
Yeah. Because the whole point, they used to encourage inward investment. You would have people coming over, but obviously with COVID you couldn't have all, the travel and that, so that was difficult.
But I wonder whether they would have been dealing with that on Zoom, as in to have the conversations. Yeah. But yes, without a doubt, all of the industries were hit with the COVID, weren't they? Definitely. So with the, the imports and exports, you were obviously facilitating things like that. And how do you keep British businesses competitive? I mean, do you actually have to look at other businesses yourself to see if they're competitive, or do you rely on these businesses telling you whether they feel they are competitive within the market?
I think it's a bit of both, and so sometimes you take things. You had to listen to the representation. So, for example, the plastics industry may have been making representations to say that imports, they were, for example, let me start again. They were at a disadvantage because certain plastics were coming in cheap, and let's say from India.
Right.
Okay.
That we are making in the UK.
Yeah.
Right.
So, you have to make representations to the government to say, well, we are at a disadvantage because this and this.
Yes. But I guess it's like any industry. To an extent, you get what you pay for. I can think of, I dealt quite a lot with the steel industry years ago, and same thing, it was kind of drying up in the UK because the steel we produced was fine steel, but much cheaper steel can come over from abroad.
Exactly.
But to an extent, you do get what you pay for.
You do get what you pay for.
It's whether that's going to work in a market that is already competitive, whatever the plastics were or the steel or whatever it's going into, can they still then make their product competitive, I guess.
Exactly. And obviously cheaper labour costs as well.
Yes, very good point. Yes,
you see?
Anywhere but the UK is going to have cheaper labour costs.
Cheaper labour costs. So you couldn't compete, for example, at the time with like China or India because they were able to produce it cheaper.
And I think we can see that very clearly with the clothes manufacturing now, can't we? Not much clothes manufacturing goes on in this country. So, sticking with the civil service, for anybody that was wishing to enter into that type of profession now, what would you say are the key benefits? I mean, is there a good pension? Is there a good holiday scheme? Is there bonuses? What would you say would be the lure to go into?
Well, the thing that attracted me at the time, I felt that they did invest a lot of time in terms of training.
Brilliant.
I'm not so sure now. The pension was one of the best pensions. People always used to say, once you've got a job in the civil service, you've got a job for life. I'm not so sure now, but the pension was very good, and they've changed the pension slightly now. So I think everyone, I can't remember what pensions everyone's on now.
Don't worry too much about the specifics.
Yeah, but anyway, so the pension, training, pensions, holidays, the wages, obviously you can't compete on a private scale, but I think they were good. And plus, the holidays.
Yes. So if you'd been there 5 years, for example, did you get another day's holiday, or did it kind of build up?
It built up.
Thing?
Yeah, it's a cumulative. It was a cumulative. I was on the max, obviously, because I've been there for some time, but it was really good. And things like you get a privilege day for the Queen's birthday and stuff like that. So.
Yes. Oh, you do, don't you? I'd forgotten about things like that. So it'd be the King's birthday now.
Yeah, the King's birthday. Yeah, if I was there. But since leaving, I know now that applying for a job there, you have to do one of these tests now. You have to do the it's like a competence-based testing, I suspect. Yes. So I think the days of looking for a job in an Evening Standard are over.
Yes. But everything kind of moves on, doesn't it? No, that's really interesting, Pauline. I thank you for your time. And I just think it's nice for people to get a flavour for different types of careers that are out there. And I know what you're saying, you're not just going to breeze in now, you will have to take a competence-based test, make sure that you're the right person for the job. But once you're in, it may not be a job for life anymore, but I do think they do offer some sort of stability, and it's a bit of a comfort blanket, isn't it? To know you will get a pension, you will get paid every month, you know, all the things that sometimes in private industries, you know, there can be problems and that doesn't always happen. So it does give you that comfort blanket of knowing that your job is reasonably secure, I think. So for some people that would be very important. Thank you very much for your time, Pauline. I really, really appreciate that. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
For help with all your job searching needs, do visit one of our digital drop-in venues. On a Monday, we are open 12:30 to 3:30 p.m. at our Poveris Centre, and on a Tuesday, we are open 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at our Kentwood Centre. In our sessions, we offer free use of computers for job searching, advice on creating a winning CV, plus lots of short training courses to gain skills in the digital world.
This podcast has been produced by Bromley Adult Education College. For full details of how we can support your return to work, visit our website www.baec.ac.uk and search for Digital Drop-In. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast to receive notifications of new episodes.